Module 3. Negotiations and Psychology. End Result Ethics. End result ethics, also known as consequentialist ethics, is a moral philosophy that evaluates the morality of an action based on its outcomes or consequences. In other words, end result ethics focuses on the result of an action rather than the action itself or its intentions. One of the main principles of end result ethics is utilitarianism, which holds that the morality of an action is determined by its ability to maximize overall happiness or pleasure for the most significant number of people. This means that if an action results in a net gain in happiness or pleasure, it is considered morally good, regardless of the means used to achieve it. End result ethics can be contrasted with other ethical theories, such as deontological ethics, which holds that the morality of an action is determined by its adherence to specific moral rules or duties, regardless of its outcomes. Another alternative is virtue ethics, which focuses on the character and intentions of the individual rather than the outcomes of their actions. One potential criticism of end result ethics is that it can justify immoral actions if they produce a net gain in happiness or pleasure. For example, some argue that torture or other forms of coercion could be justified under utilitarianism if it were believed to produce a net gain in overall happiness. Despite this criticism, end result ethics remains a popular and influential ethical theory, particularly in economics and political science. By focusing on the outcomes of actions, end result ethics can provide a helpful framework for decision-making in situations with competing interests or limited resources. However, it is vital to recognize its limitations and ensure that ethical decision-making is not reduced to simply calculating costs and benefits. Situational influence. Situational influences can have a significant impact on the likelihood of unethical conduct. These influences can include factors such as the organization's culture, the nature of the task, the presence of authority figures, and the expectations of others. The organization's culture is one of the most significant situational influences on unethical conduct. When an organization prioritizes profits over ethical behavior, it can create an environment where employees feel pressured to cut corners or engage in unethical behavior to meet targets or expectations. In contrast, an organization that strongly emphasizes ethical behavior and values can create an environment where employees are more likely to act ethically. The nature of the task can also influence the likelihood of unethical conduct. Tasks that are complex, ambiguous, or unclear guidelines can create situations where individuals are more likely to engage in unethical behavior to achieve a desired outcome. The presence of authority figures can also influence unethical behavior. When individuals perceive that their actions are being monitored or evaluated by an authority figure, such as a manager or supervisor, they may be more likely to engage in unethical behavior to please or impress that authority figure. Finally, the expectations of others can also influence unethical behavior. When individuals perceive that others around them are engaging in unethical behavior or have low ethical standards, they may be more likely to engage in similar behavior themselves. Cognitive bias. Cognitive bias is a phenomenon that refers to the tendency of the human brain to make judgments and decisions based on mental shortcuts and heuristics rather than rational analysis. These biases can lead to errors in judgment, flawed decision-making, and, ultimately, negative consequences. There are many different types of cognitive biases, including confirmation bias, availability bias, and anchoring bias, among others. Confirmation bias, for example, is the tendency to seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs. In contrast, availability bias relies on readily available information rather than seeking all relevant information. Cognitive biases can have significant impacts on decision-making in a variety of contexts. For example, in business, a cognitive bias such as the sunk cost fallacy can lead to organizations continuing to invest in projects that are no longer profitable simply because they have already invested a significant amount of resources. In personal finance, cognitive biases such as the framing effect can lead individuals to make suboptimal financial decisions based on how information is presented. One way to mitigate the effects of cognitive biases is to engage in deliberate and rational decision-making processes that seek out all relevant information and consider all possible outcomes. Another approach is to seek out diverse perspectives and engage in open-minded thinking to avoid confirmation bias and other biases arising from an individual's perspective and beliefs. Emotions and negotiations. Emotions play a significant role in the negotiation and can positively and negatively affect the outcome. Emotions can affect how negotiators perceive the negotiation process and the other party, how they communicate their interests and needs, and how they respond to concessions or offers made by the other party. One positive effect of emotions in negotiation is that they can help negotiators to build rapport and establish trust with the other party. Empathy and understanding can help build a positive relationship and make the negotiation more productive. Additionally, positive emotions such as excitement and enthusiasm can help negotiators feel more energized and engaged in the process, leading to more creative solutions and better outcomes. However, emotions can also have adverse effects on negotiation. Negative emotions such as anger, frustration, and disappointment can cause negotiators to become defensive, aggressive, or withdraw from the negotiation altogether. This can lead to breakdowns in communication, damaged relationships, and, ultimately, unsuccessful negotiations. One way to manage emotions in negotiation is to become more aware of them and develop strategies for regulating them. This can involve taking breaks to cool down, using positive self-talk to manage negative emotions, or practicing mindfulness to remain focused on the negotiation process. Unethical negotiations. In negotiations, specific tactics are considered inappropriate and unethical. These tactics may include deception, manipulation, intimidation, and other forms of coercion. These tactics are often used to gain an advantage over the other party, but can undermine the trust and goodwill necessary for a successful negotiation. In addition, such tactics can damage the reputation and credibility of the negotiator and their organization. Negotiators must avoid such tactics and instead focus on building a collaborative and productive relationship with the other party based on mutual respect, transparency, and honesty. Outcome frame. The outcome frame in negotiation refers to how negotiators frame the potential outcomes of the negotiation. This can significantly impact the negotiation process and the eventual outcome. For example, if a negotiator frames the potential outcome as a win-lose situation, they may be more likely to adopt a competitive approach and engage in distributive bargaining. On the other hand, if the negotiator frames the potential outcome as a win-win situation, they may be more likely to adopt a collaborative approach and seek integrative solutions that benefit both parties. Choosing the right outcome frame can help negotiators achieve their goals and build positive relationships with the other party. Frames. In negotiation, frames are the lenses through which individuals interpret and understand the negotiation situation. Frames help negotiators make sense of the situation and determine the issues, interests, and solutions relevant to the negotiation. When frames are constructed jointly through the talk between negotiators, it allows both parties to actively participate in defining the problems and courses of action. The joint construction of frames promotes shared understanding and helps to reduce misunderstandings and miscommunications. This process can help build rapport and trust between the parties, which is crucial in achieving a successful outcome. Frames can also play a role in shaping the negotiation process itself. For example, if one party frames the negotiation as a competition, it may lead to more aggressive tactics and a more confrontational negotiation style. Alternatively, if both parties frame the negotiation as a collaborative effort to find a mutually beneficial solution, it may lead to more creative solutions and a more cooperative negotiation style. Ingratiation and the negotiator. Ingratiation is a persuasion tactic that uses flattery and praise to create a positive impression and gain the other party's favor. It can help a negotiator build rapport, reduce tension, and increase the likelihood of concessions or agreements from the other party. However, overuse of ingratiation may backfire and reduce the negotiator's credibility.